Howdy, Desert Boy here. Hey, today I just wanted to talk to you about a few guns. I know I've talked to you before about these smaller guns, but just kind of from the perspective of, in my opinion, what works for me as far as why I would choose or how I would choose the attributes of these guns if I wanted something that was more concealable, maybe even pocket carry or something like that. And I've got 6 of them out here. There's a couple of others I might mention as to why or why not I may not have included them, but we have a wide variety of ammunition. So here we have the Walther PPKS, the only semi-auto in the group, double action, single action with a safety decocker. And it fires, and I usually carry a 90 grain Hornady FTX in there, critical defense. Here we have the Smith & Wesson 351 Airlight PD, which is in 22 Magnum, has 7 rounds. By the way, the PPKS had 7 rounds. Usually a 45 grain FTX for it in 22 Magnum or WMR. Then this is a Ruger LCR-X. This one happens to have a 9mm, which uses a moon clip. Normally I would carry probably either a Gold Dot or more than likely FTX 115 grain critical defense. I also have an LCR that I oftentimes carry 110 grain 38 special FTX in that and a critical defense. And so they're about the same weight and everything. Of course, one of them is only a double action only. This one is double action, single action, just like the Airlight was. Then we have an unusual gun. This one here, it's a little smaller. It also has light recoiling, right? But it's a 32 Smith & Wesson long. It has 6 rounds. It's is one of the options there. It's pretty heavy. This here is a Smith & Wesson 637 with enhanced action. It's double action, single action. It's a J-frame, and it usually carries a 110 grain Smith & Wesson, 110 grain Hornady 38 Special Plus P FTX critical defense round in it. By the way, the H&R, this is just an H&R 733 with a Smith & Wesson long. This doesn't shoot any of the other enhanced 32. Usually I have a 32 Smith & Wesson long by Fiocchi wad cutter 100 grain. And then lastly, we got the smallest of them, not necessarily the lightest. This is a Bond Arms Roughneck in 45 ACP. And of course, it's a single action only. It has a break action. It shoots a 45 caliber ACP. I usually like to use bonded or jacketed hollow points by Remington in that 185 grain. They also make them in 200 and stuff, but usually I use the 185 grain. So let's talk about this from a few different perspectives, okay? I mean, with the LCR-X, it's a 9mm, right? And so that's probably one of the highest velocity rounds here besides, compared maybe even to the 38 Special Plus P, we'd have to look at what ammo or whatever we were using, barrel length and all that, but just what we have here. And of course, with the LCR that I have, that can shoot 357 Magnum, which is probably the most powerful one if you wanted to go with an LCR instead of the 9mm. But I kind of picked this because, the 9mm is a more common round nowadays. Probably the 38 Special Plus P of the 637 and or the just 38 Special would be the one of the more powerful rounds. The 45 ACP may be slower, but it has more mass. It's a larger round. And then you've got, the 380 ACP, which is can have pretty high muzzle velocity with the critical defense ammo. It depends on the ammo you have. And then you're going to have pretty high muzzle velocity, probably from the 45 grain 22 Magnum. But this 32 wad cutter is no slouch of a round. It's not going to be as powerful. It's not going to have as much stopping power as some of the other ones, but just something to think about. This, for me, these all kind of have different perspectives. So let's talk about which ones are stronger in which areas, right? As far as weight goes, there's no doubt about it. This Airlight right here, this thing weighs 11.4 ounces, right? I mean, and that's, of course, I'm talking all these with unloaded weight, right? And next you would have the 637, right, which is an air weight that's at 14.6 ounces. And then you get into your Rugers, which is LCR, LCRX are 17.4 ounces. Yeah. And then you have PPKS, which they list it as 19. I've seen it also as 22. I think it depends on maybe the grips you have on it. So you're getting into heavier guns. And then the Bond Arms is 19 ounces. It's a pretty hefty little gun, but when you fire it, it's got significant recoil. And then you have this 25 ounce, H&R. So what other couple of guns did I not put on here? One of them is the P938 Legion. Now, I really like that gun. It's probably, I would consider it the best overall gun for shootability and everything outside of my LCR and 357 Magnum. And it's got night sights, but it's a single action only, and it has no grip safety, and it's got a manual safety. And if we were to get into talking about, if you were considering pocket carry or something, for me, I'm not comfortable with that. That's me. I also have a Colt Detective Special, which it's an older gun, and I kind of don't want to beat it up too much, but it's a nice selection. It's about 21 ounces, so it's in the heavier range. And it has fixed sights and things, but it does have 6 rounds. So those are the other couple maybe honorable thoughts here, but as I said, depending on how much you're trying to conceal. Now, what about the height, right? The Bond Arms is only 3.75 inches high. I mean, obviously, it's pretty small. It's a little bulky if you have it in your pocket, but if you had it like that. But then you get into the 351 PD and the 637. They're both 4.3 inches high. This one has the extended grips on it, so it makes it a little taller than maybe this one. They're pretty close, though. And then you get into the PPKS. It's 4.3 inches, which is pretty good for a semi-auto. And then you get into the H&R. It's like 4 3/8, I think, is what it is. And then, of course, these have these huge Hogue Tamer grips on monotamer grips, which are nice, but it makes it pretty tall, about 4.5 inches. Width-wise, well, the Walther is considered to be. Oh, and by the way, let's just go ahead. One thing I did not do. I can tell you all these guns are safe. This has an empty mag, right? We will show that is indeed empty. I know when I showed the picture, I had the cylinders open, but we will show that all of these are empty. Let's just go through and do the safety part real quick. Here, we can show none of these have ammo in them. This way everybody doesn't get excited for some reason. This one's kind of funky because you got to kind of pull out on this spindle there. It's empty as well. And then we got to kind of get it back in there. And we got this one. You can see it's all empty as well. Okay. And lastly, this kind of brake action that the Bond Arms has, and we can see there's no bullets inside of there. So now that we've done that part, let's get into the width. Okay, the Walther's about 1 inch wide. It's pretty slim, but these grips, I think it depends on which grips. These grips I have on here, I would think adds about 0.2 inches. Next, the H&R is a pretty thin gun for a revolver. It's maybe one of the nice attributes of it. It's kind of small, and it has light recoiling, which, you know, that's smallness doesn't hurt. It doesn't have the greatest size grip though. Then we got, you know, you get into the width. The LCRX is supposed to be about 1.28 inches wide, and when you get into the 637 and the 351 PD, they're about the same. They're 1.3 inches wide, right? And then supposedly, couldn't find, closest I could find some information said about 1.5 inches on the Bond arms. So what about barrel lengths? Well, just so happens that the LCR and the LCRX have a 1.87 inch barrel. The Smith & Wessons, they have a 1.88 inch barrel, so pretty darn close. Then you get into this guy here is about 2.5 inches, right? It's got two barrels actually, because it's got two shots. And then this one is about a 2.5 inch barrel. If we were to talk about the P938 and the Colt Detective Special again, the Colt Detective Special on that one has a 2-inch barrel, and the P938 has a 3-inch barrel. Oh, and I forgot the Walther PPKS has a 3-inch barrel. So, you know, that's certainly going to add maybe some velocity and some accuracy. Remember, you're firing a 380 round in that one, like in a P938, you'd be firing a 9mm, which would be different. Here you're firing a 9mm, right? Or in an LCR, maybe a 357 if you have it in 357 or 38 or whatever. So, sights, all of them have fixed sights. One thing nice about this one, it has a fiber sight on the front. So there's not really an advantage there, even when you get into this honorable mention, the Colt that's just fixed. However, the P938 has the I think they're called the X3 or the X-ray night sights, so that would be an adjustable too, if I remember right. But just concentrating on these 6, these guys all have fixed sights. I kind of do like the way the sights are for the Walther. It's got this kind of red dot over red dot. It's kind of hard to see there, but I do kind of like that fact. And of course, this one has a nice fiber sight on it for those of us whose eyes are not as good as we'd like to be. Some people will paint or put some kind of, or change these sights. I think the LCRs you can change out and so forth to put a different one, or they'll get a ramp. They'll put color on the ramp on the front sight. All of these, including the Walther or double action, single action, this one happens to have a safety decocker on it. All the revolvers, in this case, the 351, the LCRX, the 637, right? The H&R 733 are all double action, single action. My LCR is just a double action only, and this one is a single action only, so you got to cock it every time you want to fire it. Okay. So, capacity. Well, everybody gets interested in capacity, right? Well, in capacity, the Walther has 7 rounds and it has a magazine. So obviously it's going to be the one that's the quickest to reload of all these. Next, you have 7 rounds in this, but remember it's 22 Magnum, so it's a lower power round. And then you're going to get into this H&R. It does have 6 rounds, so maybe that's one thing in favor of it. These two, and along with the LCR counterpart to the LCRX, are 5 rounders. And you can use speed strips or speed loaders for most of these. One of the downsides of this one might be trying to find a speed loader for it or a speed strip. This 32 Smith & Wesson long is not a real easy caliber to find even sometimes. And then this one here, you could use a speed strip with it, but some people have developed techniques where they learn how to flip these open and then use the speed strip to, you know, put that in, but then you got to get the shells out too. They don't automatically extract. So the capacity, once again, is 7 on the Airlight 351 PD and the Walther. You got 6 on the H&R, and then you've got 5 on the 637 and the LCRX, and 2 on on the Bond Arms. It's but it is 45 ACP. So what's the other things about it? The things that might be nice about them, right, is that these have these Hogue tamer monogrips, which in some ways kind of, for some people, might not be as they wouldn't like carrying it concealed as much because things tend to grip to it, but it is a larger grip, and it also would maybe not make it quite as concealable sometimes. I would say that those are really nice grips. One thing about, I keep talking about the P938 and the Colt, they both have nice grips. The P938 has G10s, and they are really probably the best. But these nice extended grips on this 637 make it much easier for me to grip for myself. Remember, I'm talking about as a hobbyist enthusiast what my preferences are for why I would have these. And this one here has some nice rubber grips, gives you a nice purchase on it. Yes, this has rubber grips. This is not the easiest gun to grip. And this one has plastic ones, so you can imagine there's not a lot of, there's textures, some texturing to it, but it's not extremely helpful. So what about overall, what are the attributes of these? Well, no doubt about it, the Bond Arms is probably the smallest footprint. I don't know when you count the thickness if that's true. If you look at the 351 PD, it's the lightest. So when you have this on, you hardly know you have it on, even when it's fully loaded with 7 rounds. And then you've got, probably the best trigger, because this has an enhanced action on it in this performance center, because this is a performance center enhanced action model. It's probably got the best trigger along with the P938, because that's a single action only. And then as far as having nice revolver grips, the LCR and the LCRXs, these Hogue monotamers are great, right? And then as far as the grips, by the way, on this are also very nice for the semi-auto. I would say, being as it's only semi-auto, I would still say the G10s and the 938 are better, but we're just talking about this one. What's the advantage of this one? Well, it's very light recoiling. So if you have follow-up shots, that's going to help. But just remember, it may not be as fast to reload unless you have some reloaders. Plus, pulling out this little pin and flipping the cylinder open is not always that smooth of a action. So once again, but it does have 6 shots. So that's maybe an advantage in one way with the light recoil. So anyway, which one of these would I prefer to carry concealed? Probably for me, it'd be a real toss-up between, wanting to have the 637 or a double action only version of this, which I think would be like a 442 or something like that. But anyway, because this has a nice trigger and it's got a nice size grip for my hands, okay? And it shoots very nicely. And I really like my LCRs. I carry them the most because of the grip, but because of concealment, they probably aren't quite as concealed. And of course, I carry my double action one, the LCR versus this LCRX more often. However, remember, this is going to have, it has moon clip 9mm, which might make it a little faster reloading with some practice. So come down to probably those two. Yes, I can carry this in my pocket, but it's got 2 rounds. It's kind of heavy, and it's not the easiest gun to shoot, and its range is pretty limited. So just some thoughts, on why you might pick different things. This one here is kind of attractive in a way because it's got kind of a small footprint in a way, even though it's heavier, and it's very light recoiling. But, if you really want an effective round, you're going to have to get up into 38 special or 9mm. More than likely, you got to get beyond even 380 or the 22 mag. This one, for just having an ultra light concealable or an ultra light backup, probably be my choice for something like this 22 Magnum. So there you have it. I just wanted to go over that. I know maybe yes. Well, why did you make this video? Well, I just thought it was an interesting thought and comparison as to why I even have some of these firearms, and why I do. And from my perspective, you got to make your own decisions, follow all your local, state, and federal firearms laws, regulations, carry permits, CCWs. You got to be in compliance with all that. But for me, that's why I have these. So as Reed Desert Boy always says, be safe out there, whatever you're doing. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye now.